First and foremost, I do want to let everyone know, like Nick and I have never met before. So this is the first time like we're actually meeting. Just want to put that out there. I, for one, am 100% for third parties. I know if you're new to my channel, you may not know that, but if you do watch me, you do know that. I talk about that a lot. I'm against the duopoly. And I also want to make it known because I think it's only fair that you guys know this, that I did find out recently who the accuser is. I cannot mention their name. There's things that go along with this, but I think it's only fair to let you guys know that I am aware of who that person is. I've reached out to the people involved. As you guys saw a couple days ago, one of the volunteers came on. Obviously, I reached out to Nick and I reached out to the accuser as well. They are not ready to come forward. So just letting everybody know that I reached out to the parties that are involved. So with that being said, I want to let everybody know I am not judge and jury. I am not. This is me simply asking questions. There are certain questions that I do need to ask, but I want you to know that I'm not here to tell you whether or not someone is innocent or guilty. That's not really my place, but I am here to ask the questions, and I wanted to make sure that everybody gets to say their part. So, Nick, I want to go ahead and get started with I want to hear from you. So it was reported that you were under investigation for sexual harassment. And some of the board members I was able to talk to one of the board members. But some of the board members said that they were removed or they feel they were removed because they believe the accuser. And I wanted to give you a chance to respond to that.
That's not accurate. They were removed because they drew up a plan which was illegal, which was found by our general counsel to be illegal, to remove me and then to remove other members of the board and dozens of delegates in the National Organizing Committee with whom they disagreed with politically on the direction of the party. They wanted it to go in a more liberal direction, whereas the party is more populist and has been for a long time. And so that was the motive that they had, and the reason, in fact, that with general counsel, with our general counsel at the People's Party, we were so shocked to learn that, in fact, that's what they had in mind. This was an action that, if they had gone through with it, to purge dozens of people across the party, leaders in states across the party on the National Organizing Committee, where we're currently creating the charter for the National Committee, it would have destroyed the party. And that was so shocking that that was the final straw. But that was just, there's obviously a lot of context before that that I'm happy to go into.
When you say that they wanted to take the party in a liberal direction, can you explain like what you mean by that?
Yeah, absolutely. The messaging of the party had been shifting for a few months preceding these events. In particular, it corresponded with us bringing on additional contractors who were working with the party, who had a more identity politics focused kind of vision for the party and message for the party. And they were using the social media and the communications platforms to communicate that. Now, we are, as a populist party, there are thousands of people across the country who have inspired with that message, who've come in on that basis, who've donated on that basis, who have volunteered on that basis, and they were very alarmed with that shift in the message. And so when that was brought to the attention, that became increasingly evident, including one particular contractor who in our Slack, which we use as a team communications platform, was attacking volunteers continuously, calling them racists and white supremacists and sexists, really frivolously. Every single disagreement was reduced to an identity politics attack. And it resulted in that individual receiving dozens of grievances, that paid contractor, and also culminated in a petition with dozens of people signing for her removal. But individuals on the board who opposed the remaining populists, who supported this transition to a more liberal message and orientation for the party and mission for the party, away from class solidarity and uniting left and right, they opposed any accountability for contractors and they protected that individual who was abusing volunteers. And again, that was part of the reason that that we ended up having to really take the action of remove those. And I'll say again, with the guidance and counsel and advice of multiple lawyers and law firms, including our general counsel, who determined that what they were trying to do was not only illegal, but it was really incredibly morally unconscionable, and it would have destroyed the party. And I can give you other examples of that shift. There's in particular, two other big examples. Just let me know if you want me to go into them. I'm happy to.
Yeah, go ahead.
Oh, okay. The first is that at the same time, while these allegations had been made against me, which within a couple weeks, the committee determined by majority that really the allegations were not substantiated. The accuser was asked for evidence repeatedly and did not provide any, was not able to provide any, and ultimately stated that in fact she did not have any for the specific allegations that she had made. Following that, though, the investigation as a result of that, it was only supposed to last a week or two. And it was a thorough investigation that would involve interviews of her and other people who'd been kind of tangentially around us, and also taking written statements from us. And so the organization did its due diligence, and I think that was appropriate. Anytime there's an accusation like that, it needs to be taken very seriously. And so I don't hold any of the colleagues who decided to launch that investigation at fault whatsoever. They took the appropriate action with that. It's what happened next and what we discovered on the special committee, and what the committee that was investigating found that really was the issue. They found that there wasn't evidence for her charges against me, but rather that the charges had been essentially manufactured in a call between two board members and two contractors in early December. And at that time, they also concluded that in fact it was politically motivated. They used the word coup, two of them. And that really changed the course of the investigation, because then an investigation that was supposed to last only 2 weeks and presented those initial findings of no fault, no merit to these claims, was then politically hijacked in a way that it hadn't even been before, even though it was politically motivated from the beginning. And it was extended week after week after week for 2 months, with the seeking someone else who should be interviewed, continuous revisions of recommendations, even though it had already concluded. There were the board members who were opposed to me, who wanted me removed from the onset, and the contractors as well, continuously prolonged it for political reasons. So at the same time that this was happening in January and at the end of December, we were going through the National Organizing Committee, which is a process by which we've brought together dozens of delegates from across the country to deliberate the charter and the bylaws of the party. And so they've been elected, sent from their states. There was a particular provision, some provisions that were advanced by this group of board members and contractors that were more liberal in nature, and that many people thought would compromise the party, not even just ideologically, but potentially in its ability to remain independent from Democrats and Republicans. So to give you an example, there was a provision advanced into the charter of the party that stated that had it been approved by the delegates, it would have permitted registered Democrats to hold every single seat in our state committees, the highest authority in the states. And it would have also allowed registered Democrats to have a supermajority on a national committee. Anyone who does this work will tell you that you are the target of a massive amount of infiltration. I think you were talking about that earlier. It's something that the left and the populist movement has really had to grapple with. March for Medicare for All, Force the Vote really have have been, I think, teachable moments. And to pass a provision supported by these contractors and this more liberal faction on the board that had also launched the allegations against me, that was very, very alarming to the delegation. And in fact, it was shot down overwhelmingly by a landslide vote, that provision. And it was then that they realized that, in fact, the party and the National Organizing Committee and the delegates in the National Organizing Committee, along with the broader membership that had elected me in November, that they were populist and that they did not share the ideological orientation of these board members or these contractors who were taking the party in a more liberal direction with their messaging. And at that point, the escalation reached really a new level. And that's when these plans were drawn up to, in fact, purge the party of populist leaders, these National Organizing Committee leaders that were elected from their states to come and create the charter. And that's what was so alarming. And the other big example is this faction's attempt to block the party from taking a position on COVID-19 mandates. And so this faction prevented the national, our board, from allowing the membership to decide this issue, which is the issue that we hear from people who write into the party, from people who write on social media. They ask us about this issue more than any other issue, what position we have, or when we're going to take a position, or do we support the truckers, all these kinds of things. So there's been a big, massive demand and conversation going on in the party for months, and really there's been obstruction on the board on allowing the membership or deciding it ourselves as the board on what the party's position in that is going to be. And so they were very upset when I proposed allowing the membership to do it. They voted that down. Soon afterwards, I proposed it directly to the membership. I said, this is the People's Party. It's not right that we're not going to take a position on this. We're really 6 months behind the entire populist movement on this issue. You see individuals such as Kim Iverson, Russell Brand, Breaking Points for the most part, Jimmy Dore, lots of the most popular podcasters and independent media figures out there. This is one of the biggest things that they cover. And it's one of the things that unites a left and right coalition together most effectively. And of course, there's also the facts that the science and the politics and all of it just sides with the reality of opposing mandates. And so they blocked taking that position, and they were again infuriated when I proposed that, in fact, when I took it directly to the membership in our Slack, and I said, in fact, that we are not going to censor the membership of this party. We're not going to shut down this debate, which our members have been clearly asking us to have. We're not going to, again, being approached constantly by volunteers saying that they're alarmed by the shift in the messaging. And that also incensed this group of board members and contractors who sought to remove me and lay the groundwork for the plan that they ultimately created to purge the party of all of their essentially political opposition, everybody who disagreed with them, and ultimately led general counsel and others to advise that they needed to be removed.
So you said that there was a coup against the allegations against you. Do you have any evidence to prove that that conversation took place, or?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, in fact, I do. There's two members of the special committee, David Micel and Lise Micels, not related. And the two of them arrived at that conclusion within about a week and a half and presented that. And when the members of the board who were hostile to me and to a populist message and to the orientation that we had, and to my involvement in the messaging, and all of these various different order holding contractors accountable. When they learned of that, um, they opposed essentially making any kind of change to that.
So I guess I have to ask, like, why hasn't that evidence been released? Because like this story has been
Mhm.
out for a couple of days and it's kind of taken on its own form here. Um, if there's that evidence, why wasn't that evidence released to the public?
It actually was. There's an interview that Jordan Sheridan posted. Jackson Hinkle. It was Jackson Hinkle's interview where one of the special committee members, at least myself, joined and shared and attested to this. It's also on video that they were discussing that they believed that this is a coup. Members of the special committee, which was in fact, it led to a political reprisal on the special committee because they had arrived at the wrong conclusion. The investigation was supposed to be predetermined in the eyes of these board members who had originally fabricated the allegations against me and kind of shepherded and even escalated them when the committee wasn't arriving at the conclusion that they sought. And so it actually has. If you haven't had the opportunity to see Jackson's interview, I would definitely do that. And there's video evidence.
So there's video evidence of this happening. And the reason why I ask about evidence is because just because people say that something was said, like, I mean, like, is there any type of recording that shows that this was plotted?
There is. It is, in fact, that recording that led the other board members to attempt to remove them from the committee, from the investigation.
So when I spoke to a member from the board, one of the board members that was removed, they explained to me that this investigation was still going on. Uh, you're saying the investigation ended already?
Correct. It had concluded. The findings had been presented, that there was no fault, there was no merit to the allegations, and in fact, that it was politically motivated. And that was the perspective that needed to be stamped out and suppressed when it was arrived at by these board members who had a different conclusion in mind.
So Jackson Hinkle did an interview and the recording is on his interview.
The recording's not on his interview, but Elise Meisel's, who was one of the special committee members, attests to it in that interview, and we can find
But
that recording.
okay, because that's what I'm saying. Because like for me, like I like people want to see like some type of evidence. I know some things we can't talk about because legal situation, but people want to see or actually hear that recording. So if someone could get that to me, that would be good. Because I can't just go off of hearsay like that's the thing. But I do want to go
Right,
into this statement that you issued. So I want to go ahead and share my screen.
right. I mean, I think one of the biggest points in all of this is that we can't go in hearsay in either direction.
So you issued this statement, and I do want to go over a little bit for this. So this is the statement from Nick Brana. It says, "My friends, I have been accused of sexual harassment. These allegations are false and politically motivated. There's no evidence to substantiate them. In fact, following a thorough investigation, my accuser admitted that there's no evidence to substantiate them. We had been in a consensual relationship that she initiated. Um, this portion right here, my accuser admitted there's no evidence to substantiate them. Is that on record anywhere?"
Yes, the special committee asked that she submit any kind of evidence that of her claims to back up her claims, and for weeks she didn't, and then eventually she informed the special committee that she didn't have any screenshots or any documentation.
Is there a record of that document somewhere?
I can ask the special committee members. I'm sure that there is.
Okay. If so, and if I'm privy to see it, I would like to see that. I just want to go on for a little bit here. The accuser made
They'll be happy to
allegations.
follow up with you with those things.
Okay. The accuser made allegations against me to the board in December, 1 week before the start of the National Organizing Committee. Immediately, there were red flags mixed in with allegations were demands for professional advancement and veiled threats to the board that she would go public and attempt to destroy the party if her demands weren't met. Is there any evidence of this? Is this on record anywhere about the threats and that she would go public and attempt to destroy the party?
Yes. Again, I think it would be very helpful, frankly, for if you spoke with the two members of the special committee, um, who one of them whom was on Jackson's show, Elise and Dave.
Okay. If I, yeah,
So
if I
yes,
can get in touch
that
with
is
them.
yeah. Oh, absolutely. Be happy to.
When she made these serious accusations, the board acted immediately and appointed a committee of 3 board members to investigate. After taking written statements, interviewing both of us separately, and examining the evidence, the committee concluded that the allegations did not have merit and were a politically motivated attempt to remove me. They discovered that 2 board members who had confided to others that they had long sought to remove me and take my position had orchestrated the allegations with the accuser and a contractor. This part right here. Okay, here we go. Before anyone had investigated the veracity of her allegations, they treated them as foregone conclusion and personally called and lobbied every member of the board to remove me. The first democratically elected chair of this party, whom you, the membership, chose, instead of running against me in last year's interim chair election or this year's national committee chair election, they tried to remove me through false allegations. The People's Party is a populist party. These board members wanted to convert it into a more liberal and woke party. They had already begun reorienting the party's message away from economic populism and towards identity politics, a transformation that alarmed many volunteers. They were supported by contractors who abused their positions of authority in the party to attack our own volunteers, delegates, and even Ralph Nader, who spoke at the opening meeting of the National Organizing Committee as sexist, racist, and white supremacists for seeking to build class solidarity. Okay, this part here goes into the mandates and the discussion in Slack, which I know that you mentioned. There's something here. I do have a question about this. Uh, this group of board members also sought to remove any and all accountability from paid contractors. Paula Jean Swearigan was hired as our West Virginia state director, but failed to bring in a single volunteer or national organizing committee delegate during her 6 months with the party. So I do have a question about this because from what I saw, uh, Paula Jean was not removed. She resigned. Is that correct?
Correct.
So I guess I'm just
But
trying to
the issue,
figure out
go ahead.
why is she mentioned in this statement?
Because of the first sentence, that one of the objectives of the members of the board and the contractors who orchestrated the allegations against me was to remove any and all accountability from paid contractors. And so individuals on the board had been concerned at the quality or the performance of Paula Jean's work, who'd been brought on as West Virginia State Director as one of her primary roles. And she also ended up organizing regionally. And we asked her for months to organize in the state and help find some reliable volunteers who could help her set up a state hub in the state, as volunteers are doing across the country. And that for some of those to join us on the National Organizing Committee, 2 in particular, where we have 2 per state. Not only did she not find even one, let alone 2 members who could join the National Organizing Committee or volunteers, but it did not appear that she was even attempting to do so. She was reticent to report the work that she was doing, in fact. And as a growing party, and as a party that's bringing in donations, small dollar donations, with a $19 average for people who give $5, $10 a time, I take it very seriously. And other members of the board take it very seriously how our resources are used and what they go to. The people who are paid, and I should be clear, I've founded the party and I've been with the party for 5 years. The other board members who remain have all been with the party for 5 years, except for one, Dave, who's been with the party for 2 years. Um, not once have we taken a dime of compensation. We
So,
chose
when
we
was
chose to
her
hire others first.
when was her accountability removed? Do you remember? Like, was that recent or?
I raised it and others raised it. And when we raised that and questions about the finances as well, that were under the purview and contractual responsibilities of our contractors, of our three contractors, that isn't, it is days later when I raised it on a board call, days after I raised those concerns about the finances, about the fact that a finance plan drafted by contractors had in fact not only failed to meet its objectives, but hadn't even been executed, a 3 month finance plan. And also the lack of volunteers and delegates coming in from Polygyne Swearingen in West Virginia, and the way that Sabrina Young was treating volunteers, resulting in those dozens of grievances and petition to remove her. And it was days after I raised that on a board call, particularly the financial questions and the plan that had been drawn up that hadn't been executed, that the allegations were made against me.
Okay. Is that call recorded? Like, do you guys typically record like calls and meetings or?
No, not the board meetings. We take notes though. And there's an extensive discussion in the notes.
Okay. Let me move down here. Okay, I know I talked about the situation with Sabrina Pena Young. What was the issue? Because I saw that there was a petition to remove her. I see here it says Sabrina's woke attacks on many of you were abrasive, that dozens of grievances were filed against her, more than everyone else in the parties combined, culminating in a petition with dozens of signatures demanding that she be dismissed. What happened there with Sabrina?
Correct. Sabrina, when she was hired, she presented herself in an interview as a populist, that she understood our political message and orientation, that we're building around class solidarity and economic populism, the kind that Bernie Sanders embodied. But when we brought her on board, she centralized the communications and the social media platforms and the messaging on the social media platforms in a way that that previous media messaging and communications volunteers had not done, and began putting out a message that was more oriented around identity politics, more reminiscent of kind of the progressive wing of the Democratic Party as opposed to populist. And at that time, she also became more and more hostile to volunteers who lobbying charges of sexism and racism and white supremacy to anyone who she had a disagreement with. And so a number of volunteers felt that, I feel like, and I remember one of them writing in Slack, and it was a bit painful to read because you feel a responsibility being the national chair for what these volunteers are enduring, that they feel like they're paying this volunteer in particular had a recurring monthly contribution. So did others. They were paying the party to abuse them. And so that was one of the reasons that that raising that to the attention of the board, seeking some form of either reprimand or for that to be discussed with her was something that I sought. But my accuser used the allegations against me to factionalize the board in a way that made it impossible to hold accountable really any of the contractors who were working with us and who were essentially doing so off of the money that our donors were contributing.
Are there, if these conversations took place in Slack, are there any screenshots of these conversations with Sabrina?
Many, many.
Okay. Um, if I'm able to see that, I would like to see that as well. Um,
Certainly.
let's get to this part here. When the hostile members of the board and contractors realized that the investigation was not going their way, they encouraged the accuser to escalate her claims. The accuser's original complaint had not even used the word sexual harassment. Let's talk about that. What was the original complaint?
There was an original complaint, and I think it would be best for the members of the Special Investigative Committee to be able to discuss that with you if you'd
Okay.
like that. But the original complaint was sexual harassment was actually a term that was used by the board members when they received the complaint, and that was applied to what she detailed. And they said, "Oh, well, she's describing sexual harassment," and then she was told to escalate it afterwards.
Okay. It goes on here to say the accusers, or okay, the accuser's complaint had not used the word sexual harassment, but they told her to allege rape. This shocked the investigative committee, and one of the members later told me, every time I spoke with her, I got a different story. Every time I spoke with you, I heard the same thing. Could you talk a little bit about that?
Yeah. So during the course of the investigation, we were asked to submit testimony, to give an interview, um, and after these board members concluded that, in fact, it was politically motivated, and they used the word coup, that the charges were politically motivated. One of the contractors uh, advised and told her to allege rape instead, um, when it wasn't arriving at the conclusion that they had sought.
So one thing I do want to say here, I have to say this for my audience. Um, this statement here, getting a different story. One thing I do have to make people aware of is that that's actually not uncommon with people who have gone through trauma. It's not uncommon for them to kind of like change their story. In fact, Tara Reid went through this as well. But I have to put that out there for the audience that that is not uncommon for people who are victims of trauma. Again, I'm not saying Nick is innocent, guilty here or whatever, but I do have to make that statement. Um, I do want to go into this because this is a like I said, this story has it's really taken on a form of its own. And there's a lot of hearsay. There's a lot of people talking. Um, you said that the two of you were in a relationship at one point, or
Yes.
okay.
Yeah,
Um,
mutually consensual relationship that she had initiated, and she misrepresented that. She lied about that in her statement. She claimed that I had initiated a relationship, but in fact, she had, and there were actually witnesses to that, and that was one of the facts that really raised red flags early on to members of the committee.
did this relationship happen before or um no, I can't ask that because that's right. Shoot. Okay. So there was a relationship between the two of you at some point or another. I guess I'm trying to figure out how. I'm sorry, you guys. There's just some things I can't say because I can't reveal the name. I guess what I'm trying to figure out is, so you said that like she initiated the relationship, so I guess she asked you out. Right.
Yes, and also she uh, 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 she came to town, um, with one of the other contractors, and there was an action going on in DC, a protest, and the three of us went to that. And then we came back to Rod's house, and we celebrated a successful action. And towards the end of that night, she came and sat right next to me and put her hand on my belt buckle and put her head on my shoulders. And that is what others saw. And the intent was, in fact, very clear. Later on, she tried to kiss me as well.
Are there people who are willing to collaborate that story?
There are 3 people.
Okay. I have a couple other questions, but one thing I will say about the meetings, when I asked like if you record the meetings, my recommendation, always record your meetings. And again, I'm just speaking from experience. Because I'm just saying I've had it happen, not this situation in particular, but I've been a part of organizations and people are like, well, this person said this at this meeting and it was not recorded and we had no way to like back that or prove that. So one of the questions I do want to ask, I want to go back to last year. Um, a couple last year, some of the volunteers did come out about some of the things that they experienced while they were part of MPP. They've gone on to different shows to talk about this as well, and I believe some of them were removed. I have to ask, like, why were those volunteers removed, and also why have there been so many members from MPP removed? Because at last I saw there were like a couple hundred members that were removed.
That's not true. There's never been a couple hundred members that were removed. That was a false rumor that was started last year. Um, uh, when you're doing the work that we do, you have people that come in to our spaces, and they're clearly not there to work. They're just there to disrupt. They're just posting about things that have nothing to do with what we're doing, or they are, personally attacking other volunteers. We have a set of community agreements. And in the course of that happening, there's inevitably people that you have to remove from organizing spaces to keep them productive. And anybody who I think volunteers or works in an organization recognizes that reality. And so the individuals who've been removed violated our community agreements. Oftentimes it involves personal attacks against other people, or we had a volunteer recently who was posting firing squad walls and really kind of threatening people with these images of walls and brick walls, and talking about a firing squad. So that kind of thing, as much as anybody would like to have a kind of space where everybody gets along and you can do whatever it is that you want, and you didn't need those kinds of rules. Inevitably you do need those kinds of rules, and you have to enforce them. Otherwise the space devolves, and we think and it isn't productive, and it's unfair for the volunteers that are really there to build something, that are really there to win Medicare for all, build a major new party, do everything that inspired them to join in the first place. It's not fair. So that's why we periodically do have to remove individuals from the organizing space, and any organization does that.
So what happened in Slack? Because some of the volunteers, they have been on, and they said there was an incident that happened in Slack where I guess people were asking if white people could use the N word. And from what I saw, I saw some of these images. From what I saw, it seems like the organizers, who were obviously, I guess, not trying to be okay with that, they were the ones that were removed instead of the people asking if they could use the N word. So I guess I'm just, what happened there? Like it seems like there was some sort of disconnect, and it seems like they were just pulled. Like I guess I'm trying to figure out, was there some type of communication between like you or whoever does the communications? Was there any type of communication to those volunteers before they were removed, or were they just abruptly removed? And why were they removed to begin with?
So the issue that you're referring to is one group of volunteers that brought a petition to leadership, and their chief demand, actually, this was in November of 2020 to begin with, and their chief demand was that we form a national organizing committee to collectively decide what the rules, the bylaws, and the charter of the national party are going to be. That we do that as a party as a whole with elected members, and that's in fact exactly what we're doing now. And we said, yes, that's a fantastic idea. That's exactly what we want to do in the People's Party. But again, there's individuals who arise who they don't really want that. What they want to do is they want to disrupt the organizing space. They get into personal fights with other people repeatedly. And in this case, what you're talking about, and there's a million small things that you could raise, like, minutia of, because one person comes in and does this, and then it becomes a rumor or a story, and that's going to happen in any attempt to build an independent party. And I think that like the conversation has to be had in that context. But also, but anyways, for the specific incident that you were talking about, those individuals who had put forward the petition that we agreed to, what it is that they wanted, collective creation across the party of the National Committee rules and bylaws. They had created a different platform off of our Slack, and they were, siphoning volunteers, trying to siphon them into this other platform, a Discord platform. And at one point in this Discord, which again is not our platform, this is something that some volunteers created and tried to take people into. In that platform, someone used the N-word apparently while singing a song, and then there was a big debate that broke out on that platform, and and the debate kind of spilled over to our Slack, but it wasn't even our platform where that happened.
But why were the volunteers that complained, why were they removed instead of the people who were using the word? I guess that's what I'm trying to figure out. Like, I don't
But that's
understand
not
why they
true.
were. So
That's
were
not
all
true.
of them removed, or?
A lot of different people were removed who were a part of this ensuing fight that allowed nothing else to happen in our Slack. And a lot of people were removed in that case. I don't specifically know who used the N-word, who didn't use the N-word, who was defending it, who wasn't defending it. I know that one of the individuals who was defending it was removed. And so, I mean, there's just so many smears out there, and then once it gets out there, it's kind of, every smear is like this opportunity or attempt to try to cancel the party, whereas like anybody who does this on a volunteer basis and invites people in are going to have people who come in, whether it's for various purposes or just because, they have some other objective, or, sometimes people are mentally unbalanced. They're going to come in and they're going to do these things, and this is going to happen. And we had an open Slack up until that point, which meant that literally anyone on the internet could come in, and that didn't work out. So, and I think that's part of the
Do you
reason that
have
it was so chaotic.
well, during that time, did you have a moderator? Like, did you have a mod for Slack, or?
At that time, we got a moderator as a result of those incidents, actually, because then, we really thought that, some of us in the national coordinator circle had been doing it, but that kind of told us that we really needed someone to be doing it kind of like as a primary responsibility, because there was just so much chaos and so much distraction from the organizing.
Okay. Because here's what happened. Those volunteers that were removed, they went on to Franco's show, they went on to Vanguard, and they gave very specific details. And they have screenshots of some of these, altercations. And at that point in time, um, I do know that Franco and Vanguard, they invited you to come on as well to like give your side of the story. And I have to ask this question, Nick. Why did you not go onto those shows to give your side of the story?
Well, I think if I was there again, I probably would. But at the time, it was just so evident that the way that it was being approached was as a smear. And in fact, we had put out statements that were correcting what had happened, the record on what had happened, setting it straight. And those statements were just completely ignored by the two podcasts that you mentioned. And so when we see that, or when one sees that, you have to kind of question the journalistic integrity and intent of an individual who would do so, when we would say, hey, here's the statement that explains a lot of what you're talking about, and they would simply pretend as if it doesn't exist.
Well, I think I think the thing is like even if you have a statement, I think they wanted to hear it from like your mouth. They wanted you to come on and explain it yourself. And I think like looking back on that, like I got to be honest with you, I think that was a mistake. Like not to go on those shows because the volunteers, they had their story and people just kind of took it and ran with it, and people started to assume things like people thought, well, maybe he is at fault because he won't come on. So I think like anytime like you have that type of message coming out and they're inviting you to come on, I think that you should come on and give your side of the story. And in reference to the journalistic integrity, I will say I know Franco pretty well, pretty close wise. Franco does like a lot of research. He's written like his first article about like the whole like vaccines and stuff like that. He does a lot of work, a lot of research. So I don't think it's fair to knock his journalistic integrity. I'm sorry, but like I think that's the wrong one. Like that's somebody that does work really hard.
Well, I'm glad to hear that, but I do know that for a fact, neither one of them covered the statement that we put out in response to this. And so I do think that there is a question as to why was that done as well? Why is it treated as if we haven't responded? There are answers to your questions there. And so what is it that you really want? Do you really want to have someone come and tell it to you in an interview? Or do you want the answers? Are you interested in, the show? Are you interested in being able to put together a show, or are you interested in really trying to ascertain the veracity of what happened? And that was the issue. But like you said, I agree with you. I think it was a mistake not to go on those shows, not to join the two of them. I do think that Franco has done some good work, and if we were back there, me at least, it's not all up to me. I'm not a dictator of the People's Party, no matter what people may think. Otherwise, we probably would have been able to hold accountable some of our contractors and enforce basic reporting standards and have a membership vote on COVID-19 mandates. And so it's up to really the leadership of the organization. But if I was back there, I would be glad. I would gladly go and join those shows.
Would you go on those shows now if they extended the offer tomorrow?
Probably, if I thought it was in good faith. And again, it's not just up to me. I may want to go on, but there's a leadership that has to be convinced that it's in good faith. And in the past, they were not.
Okay.
For my part,
I want to move on to this question about the NDA. For people who are board members that are part of MPP, do they have to sign some type of a non-disclosure agreement?
yes.
Okay. If they leave the organization, are they still bound to that NDA?
Well, yes. I mean that's one of its functions.
Okay. Why did they have to sign an NDA? Is this to protect the organization or
Well, ironically, it's to protect from situations such as what is unfolding and to keep them from being any worse. That is that there are a lot of personal matters that are discussed, personal personnel matters, perspectives, in a leadership body. like the CC, the national board, you have to be able to speak openly with your fellow committee members about, who might make a good volunteer to take a certain position, or, what we should do, how we should approach a particular situation in a state, and those conversations have to be able to be held in confidence. People have to be able to know that, okay, if one particular member of the leadership doesn't find, may have an issue with some of the things that a particular volunteer has done, maybe they've been name calling someone else, maybe they just don't seem like they're as adept on a platform as we're looking for. They have to be able to share that openly with the other members. Otherwise, you would kind of find yourself in like a perpetually gagged and paralyzed state.
Okay. Um, there are questions that have come about the finances when it comes to MPP. It was reported that there was $20,000 spent on a logo. Can you talk a little bit about that?
Yeah, there was a firm that we hired to help us produce a logo. And at the time, we didn't know that they, in fact, that one of the individuals who had suggested we hire that firm had previously worked with the firm. And so they ended up taking the product, the design, in a direction that was not what we were seeking. And so that's what happened. As a party, we make expenditures, some big, some small. Um, I, I have to say again that if for anybody who's trying to start a political party, and any political party, you can go through and you can try to pick apart, like, why was this done? Why was this done? And then if those reasons ultimately add up to, oh, well, yes, I don't want a new party. I don't want Medicare for all. I don't want to end the wars. We're like, as we're having this conversation, two superpowers are like, 100 seconds to midnight. And so there just has to be kind of like a level of understanding, I feel, among people, that it's like every little controversy, and the left is so good at this, at just trying to cancel people or organizations for every little controversy, and really losing sight of the big picture, that is like, we have two parties that are destroying us. They're destroying us.
Yeah,
And
I get that part
unless
and I
we change,
understand. I get that and I understand that, but $20,000 is a lot of money for a logo. Like I that just
it
it's
wasn't
part of
just a
my
logo.
job. Like
It was a full design package. It was a full branding package.
okay, because part of my job, one of the things I do is like I focus a lot on the money.
Mhm.
So that is like a thing with me. I do want to ask about candidates and ballot access. So at this point in time, has MPP run like any candidates for office? And if not, are there plans to do so in the future?
No, but absolutely there are plans. In particular, there is a really big opportunity, looking at the state of the country, to run, I believe, a populist presidential candidate. 2/3 of the country wants a major new party. Uh, Half of the country is independent. Only a quarter identifies with Democrats or Republicans. We see what these, there's been no recovery, let alone from the Great Recession, and then the other, depression, this depression that we had in the midst of COVID, which is basically continuing. People's standards of living continue to decline, no matter which party's in power. The cost of healthcare, the cost of education, student debt, all of it blows up, and so there is a massive opportunity. I remember when I worked in the Bernie 2016 campaign with Bernie Sanders, my job there was to try to win him support from the superdelegates. It was a miserable job, but they hired me for it because because I had worked on other Democratic campaigns, and they thought, well, you've worked with the establishment of the party. Why don't you try to convince them to support Bernie? Obviously, they didn't have a lot of success. They were all lobbyists. They were all consultants. But there was a poll that I remember that showed that 65% of people wanted an independent candidate, even in 2016. And then there was a similar poll in 2000. Jesse Ventura there was some kind of buzz about whether Jesse Ventura was potentially going to run. And there was a Fox News poll that showed that he was polling at 18% without even campaigning. And that's pretty remarkable because that's enough to get into the debates. And so there's a huge, huge opening. And really, it's up to us as a populist, as the left, to get our act together and field someone to challenge these two parties. Otherwise, we're going to get, Trump, DeSantis, or Biden, or Harris, and we all know what that leads to. And really, I don't know how much more this country, this planet, can take. We're really flirting with existential risks now to human civilization as a whole, let alone the country. When you're talking about genetically engineered viruses, the kind that were being experimented on at the Wuhan lab, that Fauci FOIA requests have demonstrated, and also when you're courting nuclear war, as is happening in Ukraine right now. So, we can argue about minutia or talk about minutia or judge minutia like all day long, all the way up until, the nukes start flying or something happens. But, and maybe as a species, if we can't get our act together before then, maybe we deserve it.
Are there MPP candidates running in this year, like 2022 or 2024, or?
Not yet. There are some potentially interested. We need ballot access in states. We have ballot access in 2 states, Virginia and Florida. You can register as a member of the People's Party in several other states, including Massachusetts, California, Oregon. But we don't have a slate of candidates for 2022 yet. And that means that they wouldn't be able to run on the ballot as a People's Party candidate. But in municipal races that are nonpartisan, there we could run People's Party affiliated candidates. And there's the potential that we could do that. In my view, though, the biggest opening for us as a populist movement and as the left is really to be able to field a very strong presidential candidate that appeals to left and right in the way that Jesse Ventura did, and run a candidate such as that.
Can you run local candidates though? Like I'm thinking more so like not just the federal level, because I like to focus on the states a lot as well. So I'm thinking more so city council or school board or mayor or governor. What about starting on the local level? Is that something that could be done now, or?
Absolutely. In fact, in our last national organizing committee call just last night, there was an individual in Georgia who's considering such a run. And so municipal races are great as a way of getting a foothold, because you can run without having a ballot line yet, and potentially elect some candidates. But kind of going back to what I was saying before too, I think that where people are in this country, and I've been to more than a dozen states over the last 5 years that I've volunteered with the People's Party. And in all of my conversations, it's not that people don't want an independent party, it's that they really want to see a viable plan. They're desperate for it. They're desperate for an alternative to these two parties. And so I think that's the challenge, is people don't want to play around the edges. Things are so degraded and messed up in this country that people want solutions that are on the scale of the problems that we face. And that's why I think that the presidential campaign is really the strongest avenue that we as a broader movement could take.
Okay. Have you spoken to Princess Blanding by chance? Because I had her on and she was an independent candidate. She ran for governor in Virginia. If not, I highly recommend you speak to her, because Princess Blanding had an incredibly difficult time running as an independent candidate in Virginia. They wouldn't let her debate, even though she met all the requirements. So she's a part of the Liberation Party, but I highly recommend, I can give you the contact info if you need it, but I highly recommend speaking with her, because Virginia is a very difficult state to run as a third party or independent candidate, because the rules are ridiculously strict. But yeah, I definitely recommend reaching out to her. So ballot access in Florida and Virginia.
Virginia.
I know I know people are trying to get ballot access here in Massachusetts as
Hmm.
well. Um, so look, that was a lot of information put out. Again, like I'm not judge and jury here, but I did need to ask those questions. And I have to ask this one as well, Nick. Like, given everything that has happened and the things that have come out, and even after this interview, I feel that even after this interview, I don't feel that this is going to calm down like for a while. So, given everything that has come out, do you think it may be best for the organization as a whole if you were to step down as leader?
That's up to the organization, frankly. And the reaction that I've received has been the complete opposite. The reaction that I've received is that we are grateful to you for putting yourself out in a way that you become the target of these attacks. And that you do so knowing that whoever is in your position will inevitably face these kinds of attacks. Um, that is the reaction that I have received. Instead, is one of gratefulness. And I'll also say that I know that even though I can intellectually know that whomever was in my position would face attacks like this, because we see movement leaders, Shahid Buttar, um, Julian Assange, New York mayoral candidate, many others. These kinds of allegations are weaponized against them constantly. And even knowing that, even though I know that intellectually, and even though I know that I haven't done anything wrong, it doesn't reduce the pain or the hardship of being a source of controversy to a movement that I love and to which I've devoted the last 5 years of my life, and the people who have believed and given to it and volunteered and everything they've done.
Yeah, I'm sorry. Like I wasn't trying to I wasn't trying to be mean. I just yeah, I I'm sorry. I just had to ask that question. But one more thing, I know that your father is also involved in the organization. Do you feel that there may be a conflict of interest with the position that he has in the organization?
I don't, and neither does the volunteer community. The volunteer community, again, has not raised it, just like your last question. If there's such a feeling that there's something wrong with his position, he devotes countless hours, like I do, countless hours to helping this happen, to making it possible for us to get this far. And you can see this conversation is a testament to what it takes and the kinds of challenges you face to do this work. Um, we have we have an independent consulting firm called Stacy Owens and Company. They do great work, and they handle our finances, and they submit our reports, and they verify the finances. And in fact, as a 527 nonprofit located in Michigan, we are legally required to report all contributions over $200 and all expenditures over $200. And we go a step beyond that and we put them on our website. We link to it, to the IRS website with the 990s and the 872s forms where we disclose this information. So the finances are open to everyone. And everyone is welcome to look through them, and that's why some people do come up with these questions about, why was this spent about that, why was it
Right.
spent about that. That's where that comes
Right.
from. If it wasn't transparent, nobody would know that.
Right. Okay. Nick, I got to tell you, doing this type of organization, it's I know that it's really tough work. Um, there there's gonna you got to be tough. You got to be
Yeah.
tough.
Yep.
But thanks so much for coming on. I got two more news stories I want to get to tonight. But thanks for coming on and telling, your story.
Sure thing. Thank you for having me, Sabby. It's good to finally be on. Good to talk to you. I've appreciated and admired your work.
Thank you. Bye.
Bye. Have a good night.